Good evening. I'm Gloria, and this is Open Minds Podcast, Waking the Dead, Ghost Stories. Good evening. In the UK, it's 8 o'clock Saturday evening, and I hope you're ready for case number 2. Tonight's case we're going to look at is the accidental medium. My guest, who's narrating their personal story, is the lovely Lindsey Banks. Welcome to the podcast, Lindsey.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Thank you for having me.
Oh, bless, bless. Now, I'm going to read an introduction and then we're going to take it from there. And then you make the decisions whether or not that influenced Lindsey's experience. Here we go. When Lindsey was around about 12 or 13, she became quite obsessed with various stories of the paranormal. I can't even read tonight. She remembers reading about poltergeists and seeing photos that blew her mind. The fascination was massive. Then she was introduced to the medium Doris Stokes by her grandma. This famous medium is well known in the UK and around the world. And she was amazed that you could talk to dead people. So there is the brief introduction to tonight's story. So, Lindsey, let's start talking about when you moved in to your ex-husband's house.
Yeah, so unbeknown to me at the time when I moved in, I had no idea that his house had spirits in it. So
Mm-hmm.
this house, so just to put it in your mind, when you think of a haunted house or with spirits in it, generally you go to this like really old American style dark house.
Yeah.
This house was a brand new build. It was a 4-bed
Mm-hmm.
detached house. It was on a new
Mm-hmm.
estate. You know, it was everything about it was just brand new. So the idea that there would be spirits haunting that space was
Mm-hmm.
like just completely like, no, it doesn't even look haunted.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really something that me and my ex-husband had talked much about. He never shared any information with me before I stayed over. And the first night that I stayed over,
Mm-hmm.
when you just sort of wake up sort of halfway through the night and it's sort of
Yeah.
that early morning, and I was facing a window and I could hear what felt like someone trying to get in the front door. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, why is someone rattling the door? And as I started to come to and wake up a little bit more, I had this realization that actually it wasn't the front door, it was the ensuite bathroom door, which was about
Mm-hmm.
2 meters away from me. And I
Uh-huh.
had my back to it. So I was lying there awake, when you freeze and you're like, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
scary. So I turned around, I turned over, I looked at the door and it stopped. And that was
Okay.
my first experience in that house, which
Your
freaked me out.
ex-husband, where was he at the time?
He was next to me in bed. He was
Fast
fast
asleep.
asleep.
Nothing got him. Nothing. No. Okay.
Not
Okay.
that time. He had, so again, I didn't realize until later on, he had his own experiences in that house.
Okay.
So yeah.
However, we're going with yours first. Go for it.
Yes. Okay. So that was the first experience. And then when I started to stay over there more often and when I finally moved in, I always felt a little bit uncomfortable and as if I was being watched. And
Uh-huh.
um there was one time where I'd gone into, so he had some spare rooms for his sons, and I'd gone into one of the rooms, and the digital clock, it's the hours were moving forwards quite slowly, and then the minute side was moving backwards really quickly. And again, when you look at something,
Yeah.
and I was like, I shut the door because I was like, I don't want to see that. I was
Yeah.
like, that's really
Yeah.
freaky. So
I mean,
I
can
had
I
that
ask
experience,
on
and
that one? This was a
uh
digital clock, yeah? Electrical
yes,
clock.
yeah.
So, okay, so I'm going to ask on that. I mean,
Mhm.
I've heard of this before, but some people say, oh, it's electrical fault. But trust me, guys, this is a common phenomena. And you've got to take each one and build it up for all the events. So
Yeah.
it started with the door. Now you've got the digital clock and the hand going round. I mean, that would freak me out, never mind anything else.
Yeah.
What happened next?
So then the next thing that happened, which for me is probably like one of the most unusual things I would say I think I've seen like with my own two eyes in my life. So I used to work at a retailer, and this one day I decided, well, I was working on a night shift, and I thought I'm just going to have a lie down on the settee, around 4 o'clock,
Hmm.
try and get some sleep before I go to work. And
Hmm.
as I was lying on the settee, I had my eyes closed, and all of a sudden I thought I need to open my eyes. And as I looked towards, there was some doors which sort of led into the dining room. As I looked
Hmm.
towards these doors, there was just this figure, and I don't like it wasn't a figure that you could distinguish. It was just an outline of a black shadow against
Yeah.
these windows. And literally,
Okay.
it's really difficult to explain because it's so instant and it's so quick. But as soon as I opened my eyes and saw it, I took a massive intake of breath. And in the time, I just went, it came towards me and then disappeared.
Oh God.
And that, honestly, it freaked me out, Gloria. I was just like, what on earth was that? And
Uh-huh.
it was just the suddenness of it, and the fact that I'd seen it with my two
Uh-huh.
eyes so clearly. And that's the
How
only
did,
time
I
I've
mean,
gone.
sorry, I've got to say, I mean, how did, you obviously had an interest in ghosts and paranormal, but such an experience. All right, the clock going around is one thing, the doors banging is another, but to have an apparition while you're
Mm.
physically awake and coming towards you, I mean, God, I mean, did you run out the house?
No, I should have done though.
You know what? It's like these movies. You know when you watch the movies and you're going to the screen, get out the house.
Yeah,
No one ever goes out the house. Why?
yeah.
Why? I
I don't
mean,
know. Yeah, I think so for myself, like I'd become interested in Reiki a couple of years before, well, about a year before I actually moved in and met my ex. So
mm,
I had this interest in energy and was starting to explore
with
that
you. So
again.
that could be, yeah, that could allow for you. Okay, right, I've got that. Let's get back to this
Mhm.
apparition coming
Mm,
towards you when you took that breath.
yeah. So yeah, so like I said, it freaked me out massively, and I was like, and then I went into this like questioning. I was like, did I really see that? What was it?
Yeah.
Why is
Hmm.
this thing in our house? Who is it?
Hmm.
And so there was loads of questions going through my mind, and at that time I wasn't as connected, shall we say, as what I am now. So it was
Yeah.
just all in my mind, just wondering and just going,
Yeah.
why is this thing coming through me? Why have I seen it? What is it? Is it
Hmm.
is it negative energy? Which I wasn't really sort of like I said, I'm very aware of it now and what it is, but at the time it was just shock, and I was just like,
Yeah.
if I tell
Yeah.
anybody this, they're going to think I'm crazy, and they're going to be
Yeah.
like, nah,
Yeah.
Lindsay, you didn't see that.
Uh-huh.
But I've had like, I think for me there was a massive, just being there in the house was a massive opening, if you like, for me into knowing that there's more to this world than we know.
Do you think, okay, now we got to go somewhere here because that was the question I posed before we go to the rest of the stories, to the little girl and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Let me jump in here and say, do you think of at that point you had a recognition the house was haunted, or were you still not quite sure?
No, it definitely felt haunted. Like I remember, you know, feeling as if I'd like, and I don't know if any of your listeners have had this before, but that like a feeling of intense pressure, when you're asleep, like that sleep paralysis. I would
Yeah.
often have that in the house. I hear it today. And I think it was because I never really knew, like, again, I didn't know about energy. I didn't know how to protect myself. I didn't know about
Mm-hmm.
how to move spirits on, etc. So I would often feel this intense pressure on my body whilst I was asleep, which just scared the bejesus out of me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, there was lots of different things. Like the bed was like my duvet would be tugged and things would move in the house, and you'd be like, I'm sure I just put that there, but it would just move. Um,
And
so yeah.
you said in your email there's one point that you heard footsteps running up and down the stairs.
Yeah.
What was going on there?
So after the initial like banging doors, I said when my ex-husband woke up, I was like, oh my God, I was like, you can't believe what happened. And he was like, oh yeah, I probably should have told you. I was like, told me what? And he was like, oh, I think there's a portal on the stairs. And I was like, what the frick's a portal? I was like, I don't know what that
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
And he said, he'd had experiences himself in the house, as had like his
Hmm.
lodger. So yeah, there was footsteps on the stairs. There was sometimes it sounded as if the TV was on when it wasn't. Um,
Hmm.
there was a lot of activity within this space, and
Hmm.
it turned out that when we sort of looked at some of the history, that the
Yeah.
land had belonged to a man who hadn't been very kind to his children.
Oh.
So yeah.
I mean, we are finding that a lot in this area, this phenomena. People, as you rightly said at the beginning, you wouldn't think a new house would be haunted. And it's coming up a lot and a lot that it can be new, it could be old, it could just be the land, it could be what happened previously, and the energy, the residue energy is still there.
Mm.
And I can't wait to find out, and I'm sure the audience too. Someone's just said, oh, that happened in my house as well. um, it's quite a
Mm.
common phenomena. Is
Definitely.
that did you ever think at this point, this house don't like me, or were you still not sure? Or were you still not
So
sure?
my feeling with that house was that it did not have like a good energy. So and again, I didn't know what tools I could use to close
Yeah,
portals or to move spirits on, etc. at that point. So for me, it was just like, we need to leave, we need to get out of here. I don't like the energy anymore. So we ended up actually moving house, because of it. Um, because it wasn't a pleasant space. You just always felt like you were being watched, which wasn't very nice.
I mean,
And
many
then
many people do move on, and the fact is, do you know what happened to the next tenants in that house, or don't you know?
no, I don't. So it was, generally when you move house, I'm always want to like leave flowers and cards, and be like, oh,
Yeah.
welcome in, etc.
Hmm.
The way that our house move went, it was as if the house didn't want to let us go, because there was a lot of controversy over the selling of the house. And
Ah,
when the new owners
ah,
moved in, they were very much like, come on, you need to get, it was just, everything was like angst, and it was negative and
the
just not
energy
nice.
was interfering, and it will do with relationships as well. Another question in the audience from Nadia Fenty. What did your family and friends think when you told them, Lindsey?
So my family are sort of used to me by now.
But at
But
the
I
time, what
never
did they
really
think?
shared it with, yeah, at the time, I never really shared it with anyone, because you question yourself,
Yeah,
especially when you're
yeah,
first getting into this. You're like, is it
yeah,
me? Am I going mad? Am I
yeah,
seeing things? Am I hearing things? So I didn't share it initially. I just kept it to myself, and I was like, like, because I used to work at Tesco at the time. I was like, how
yeah,
can I go into Tesco and start telling my co-workers, that I'm seeing these spirits and I'm seeing these
yeah,
apparitions? So initially, I just kept it to myself, because I couldn't make sense of it, and I
yeah,
didn't know really how to share it, where to share it. We're so lucky now with social media that there's so many
yeah,
different groups and pages,
absolutely. I mean, you got
so
to look at. In your case, it's the opposite to the one previously. Like, there are houses that throw people out. Families have had to move, but there are
yeah,
houses that the energy, for what unknown reason, wants to keep the occupants there to actually feed off them because
exactly.
with their trauma, and so hence why when you're trying to leave the house, things weren't flowing. It was just all going. Let's just say tits up. It wasn't going the right way.
Yeah,
And did you
exactly.
feel that? Did you feel that?
Yeah, it's only speaking with you now, Gloria. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, the removal guys were late, which is why we were late getting out of the house. The contracts
Yeah,
didn't get signed till the last minute. Everything was
yeah,
messy about the move. It was horrible. Um, but yeah, I definitely resonate now. Like, looking back and then being able to reflect now, sort of like,
yeah,
11 years later, I'm like, actually, yeah, it was difficult to leave. It was as if the house was just like, no, don't leave. We need you. We need you.
Yeah, we want to
So yeah,
feed off you and make your life hell. I've heard that numerous times before. I've
yeah.
got to ask you then, another part of your email, a young girl, she visited your son, who was only 3. Was that
Yeah.
in that house, or is it going to be another house?
No, so following that house, we moved into another house, and the house afterwards was very quiet. It had a lovely old lady spirit and a cat who she kept herself to herself, and it was
Yeah,
very peaceful. And then we decided to move up towards York, and again, it was a modern build. And
yeah.
the first night that we moved in, my ex-husband had gone back down to where we were living to sort out the old house. And I slept with the light on because, again, footsteps running up and down the stairs. I was scared. I was like, oh my God, who's in this house now?
I
And
mean, did you ever? I've got to ask the question, and I have to ask these questions. Do you think that whatever was in the first house followed you to the second house? Or were
no.
you just very unfortunate that each house that you moved to had spirit in it?
Yeah, so I don't feel like anything followed us. I feel like, because we had that stepping stone before York. But my feeling was, I suppose, as I was maybe sort of like developing my spiritual awareness, shall we say,
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
Reiki, I was working with
yeah,
crystals.
yeah,
It's, I remember saying to my ex-husband, it's like you become this lighthouse and this beacon where these spirits just are drawn to you, and you become more aware of the things that you can't see or
yeah,
feel or maybe hear even more than what you
yeah.
did
I'm with you.
previously.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm with you. Did your
um
ex? I've got to ask you again. Sorry to interrupt, but I've got to ask these
no, no,
questions. It's intriguing. Um, how did your ex-husband take this? Was he as like open as you at this point, or was he not phased at all, being a male?
he was very open. So I'd met him on my Reiki Level 1 course, and we'd gone
Mm.
to various sort of like psychic evenings,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah.
So
I'm with you now.
yeah, so we both had like that understanding, awareness that there was something else that we can't physically touch or see. Um, but we weren't actually sure who the footsteps belonged to until we had two separate friends came to visit, and they
Hmm.
both said they could feel the energy of this little girl.
Yeah.
And one of my friends said, I can see her with like an auntie looking woman, like a matron, and the girl doesn't want to leave your house. And I said, well, as long as she
Hmm.
behaves herself, she can stay if that's what she wants. I'm quite happy for that. And then,
Hmm.
yeah, it
Did
was my
she?
son.
Did she?
um,
I've got to ask. Did she behave herself?
She did, honestly, like, because I was like, as long as she doesn't wake my children up in the middle of the night, I was like,
Mhm.
I'm quite
Yeah.
happy for it to stay. But it was really interesting, Gloria, because for me, whenever I move to a new area, I like to investigate the land, and I like
Mm.
to investigate the history of the
Mm.
place. And less than 500 meters away from where we moved to used to be the old York Fever Hospital, which had
Yeah.
closed down. And again, unbeknown to me at the time, children were sent there with fevers, diseases, etc., but they
Yeah.
weren't allowed to see their parents, so their parents had to speak to them through the window because
I'm
they
with
were
you.
so worried that the parents would catch this and then take it back. So my feeling was, once I'd sort of like looked into the history a bit more, I was like, well, maybe this girl passed away in the fever hospital, and she's
Hmm.
just looking for her parents. She doesn't know where they are, so she's a little bit lost and in that stuck space.
I'm with
Um,
you. I'm with you. Can I just? I'm going to keep jumping in because I'm just really
yeah,
getting
do
into
do.
this story now. So you said in your email that this little girl she visited your son when he was 3, and she was telling him she was lost. How did that come about? What did your son say to you?
So again, our children are so susceptible, to spirits, to everything we
Yeah.
can't see. And for me, what I've learned massively is that, like, allowing them that space to open up and
Hmm.
encouraging them to share their stories as well. So it was one morning, my son just walked into my bedroom and he just went,
Hmm.
"Oh, mummy," he said, "I had a visitor last night." And I said, "Oh, did you?"
Hmm.
And it's about not shaming them, not shutting them down. I just went, "Oh,
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
you?" I said, "Who was
Yeah.
it?" And he just said, oh, he said it was a little girl who said she was lost and she couldn't find her parents. She didn't know where they were, and she wanted me to play with her. And I said, oh, what did you say? And he said, I was too tired, mummy.
Oh, bless, yeah. I mean, so you saw that your child wasn't, scared or perturbed, so you were quite happy for that to
No.
continue, because we all do that, guys. If our children see the invisible friends, as we call them, as long as they're not
Yeah.
telling them bad information or scaring them, then it's okay just to let
Mm,
the child go on and communicate. So this young
mm,
girl,
mhm.
did you find out any more detail about her? What happened?
Not specifically with her, no. My feeling was that, because so basically she was with this older woman at the time, in
Hmm.
spirit. And um when I was talking to my friend who is also a medium, she said, oh, she says the older lady would like to go as long as, like, the girl can stay in the house. And I said, well, tell her that's fine. And then the next minute my friend said, oh, she's packing her bags. And then she said, I hope she's not coming with me, Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was
I was like,
saying earlier on, guys.
yeah.
Is that they do tend to attach to you, some of them, if you've got your light bulbs on. I mean, I'm going to come in again and say, who was the young woman that had been burnt there?
Oh, so no, so the young woman, so that young woman, she wasn't burnt there. So that was
Ah,
another experience that I had. So
oh gosh, we're going to go there, guys. Yeah, we're going to go there. Keep
yeah,
going.
so so I've done like a couple of, like, paranormal investigations, and
Mm.
there was one that came up in an amazing place. So if anyone's been to York, there's a beautiful building called the Merchant Adventurers Hall, and that's been there since the 1400s. And this opportunity came up to go and do this investigation. So I went along and I was like, I'm just going to see what comes up, what I feel. And honestly, Gloria, it was one of the weirdest experiences of my life. So there was myself and another lady who had we'd only met once before, and we were sat in this space, and it was like there's like a church chapel part of it. And as we both
Hmm.
sat there, we both started sort of like fanning ourselves, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's getting really hot in here, isn't it? And the other lady was like, I feel like I'm burning up. And
Uh-huh.
what came through was, and again, I don't know fully the history of that space, but what we could both feel was a young woman being burnt in a fire, for whether it was witchcraft or for our beliefs, etc.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
independently, we both had that same experience. Um,
Hmm.
and then the investigators had, I don't know if anyone knows, like, I'm not very good with technology, but like the Xbox Connect, I think it is, where you can
Yeah,
see
yeah,
stick figures. Yeah. So
yeah.
they had one of these cameras, and I was sat upstairs, and it's like, the lady was saying, why don't you put out your hand, Lindsay, and invite anyone in? So I just held out my hand. I was like, if anyone wants to come and speak to me, do. And I felt as if someone held my hand. And then all
Hmm.
of a sudden, I just heard these two gasps from these two women filming. And when I went and looked at the recording afterwards, it showed this, like, man, well, the stick figure of whatever it was, coming
Uh-huh.
towards me and putting his hand in my hand.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
could feel that. And I was like, oh my God, that is really bizarre.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
It's not very often. I mean, I know many people go out and do the paranormal investigations and
Mm.
audio and video, and it's not very often they actually catch anything. It is a rarity. So when you do, I've caught one photograph. I have it of mine's not a spirit. It was an ET actually. I
Oh,
actually
wow.
caught it. That was a first for me. But that is a very rare thing. I'm going to ask you now. Now we're just going to hold it here for a second.
Hmm.
These experiences you're having, so you're saying no one follows you. That's fine. We've got that. Do you think? So I'm coming here, asking on behalf of the audience, and for
Hmm.
anyone in the audience, if you have any questions about Lindsay's experience, please ask them, and I'll pass them over to Lindsay. Do you think that when you were younger and your interest in the paranormal, into the ghost stories and poltergeist, do you think that influenced you to experience these things or not? Because some would say, and I wouldn't say it, but some would say, oh, it's because you were so interested in these, these paranormal things. That's why you experienced it. What do you think? What's your answer to that one?
So my feeling is that, as a young girl, like I said, the things that I was reading just resonated, and I was like, there must have been that knowing somewhere really deep inside that
Yeah,
when
yeah,
we die, that's not the end.
yeah,
And then, you know, so after the age of about 14, 15, I got into boys, I went out
yeah,
drinking, I went to
yeah,
uni. So I literally shelved all of that, and I was like,
yeah,
no, I
yeah.
had no interest at all. So it wasn't until I was 28 when, I had this corporate job, and I was stressed out, that I was like, there must be something more to life than working like
Uh-huh.
12 hours a day
Yeah,
and
yeah.
etc. And I suppose that's when I started going back into sort of like the Reiki and the psychic evenings, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I do, I feel like it's within all of us to be able to see ghosts, to
Yes,
feel them. And sometimes they're very in your face, and sometimes it's more
yes,
subtle, like a little
yeah,
robin or a feather, or a
yeah.
song
I'm
will
with
come on
you.
the radio that reminds you of a loved one. um
Mm-hmm.
but like you were saying earlier about the photos, I have three very clear photos of
Mm-hmm.
ghosts that I have taken within Yorkshire.
Mm-hmm.
So my first one is of a guy at York Castle Museum, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
outline of the back of this man wearing a black suit, this massive grey bushy hair, his hands in front of him, and he looks like he's shackled walking through the prison cells.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't there. There was no man there at that time.
No.
And then the
I mean,
second
many have said, this is modern times, so we can, photographs can be checked if they've been, airbrushed or something like that. And I personally get a bit sick of people, trying to debunk it all. But it is a rarity to catch something on photograph, and when you do, you're very, very fortunate. I mean, you're looking at, your childhood experience, then the break, which is really common. And I have to say to the audience, many mediums, not all, but there are many mediums, and I'm included, that go through the paranormal, like it's like a schooling. You're already open, and people say, well, I would like to see spirit. Well, you can. I agree with Lindsay. Anyone can see spirit. Spirit is already there, right next to you. It's just your belief systems that block you from doing it. However, when you first come into this, I know when I was a child, I was scared shitless. I would hide. I would
Yeah, me too.
hide, you know, and I'd hide in cupboards. And what do we always do, guys? We hide under the blankets as if that's going to make any difference at all. No, and you're under the blankets. And this is being a child. So I totally relate to that. So, when skeptics come in, and this is the whole point of the show, to show people, these are normal experiences. And I always say the skeptics, they're not really skeptics, they're debunkers. They're absolute
Mm,
debunkers. When they eventually, and some have had their experiences, oh my God, they'll even deny that as well. So when we say you can all experience it, however, if you choose not to, that's your path. I've got to ask you a
mm,
question on this.
yeah.
What happened to the ex-husband? Was it to do with the spirit world and the houses?
No, not at all. No,
you
it
know,
came time, where we just had to depart it and go our separate
I
ways.
mean,
So
the show last week, I mean, there was killing in the house. The energy of the
wow,
house was were getting family members to kill another. That's how
wow.
powerful it was. Hold on, we got another question from Nadia
Mhm.
Fenty. Do you think you had this calling as a child and your obsession was actually your initiation, I've moved up, telling you to investigate the spiritual world more? Do you think that's the case, Lindsay?
Yeah, 100%. It's like I have this knowing now, like this really strong knowing. It's like that that is part of my work. That's part of, like, where I was meant to go. And I very much am always like, if I have experiences, like
Mm-hmm.
initially, I was like, oh my God, I'm not telling anyone that, I'm too scared.
Yeah.
But gradually over time, I'm like, actually, people need to hear these experiences to know that they're not going crazy and that, this is normal.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's taken me a long time to get, well, it took me quite a few years to get to that point.
Mm,
But now if anything happens to me, it's like I
mm.
speak to the Pleiadians and I'll share that. And I remember the first time I did a YouTube video and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to share that I'm talking to aliens. People are going to think I'm crazy. But I was like, I
Yeah.
need to do it because
Mm,
that's my purpose. So I do feel as if, like, reading the books when I was younger, and
yeah.
being interested in ghosts and poltergeists
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
that opening initially, but
Yeah.
my path wasn't to follow it at that time. I needed to go and experience life,
Yeah. I
and
mean, it happens to most. I mean,
yeah.
I'm the same from childhood, toddler, seeing dead people. Mine were physical. It
Mhm.
wasn't um, energy, it was physical. I couldn't tell the difference. Then
Yeah.
teenage years come along. There was no sex, drugs, and rock and roll because my daughter's in the chat room. There was just alcohol, daughter, just to let you know. I was a good girl. But then it came back. But the weirdest thing for me is I was constantly interacting with spirit and doing readings, and I didn't know there were readings, and blah blah
Mm.
blah. And it wasn't until I met a group of old school mediums, proper mediums, and we befriended. I think it was actually, again, I was doing Reiki. Yes, there's coincidence there or not.
Mm.
And they were talking, and I said, "Oh my God, this is the God's truth, guys." I said, you see dead people, you go off and that's your job." And they looked at me with this perturbed face, like, "What the hell are you, Gloria? What do you do?" I said, "What do you mean, what do I do?" And they said, "You speak to dead people." And it never registered that I never
Mm.
knew what a medium was. I never knew. I said, "You what? You do what we do. We just do it differently." And I had no idea that all of my experiences that I was doing was mediumship until, I turned and I said, "Well, you're weird. You're witches." I called them witches. I
Did
called
you?
them witches. You're talking to dead people. I had no idea what it was all about and what it was for. Once that kicked in, then obviously the practice, the development, how to control, and all the
Mm.
rest come in. So, I mean, anyone else got any questions? Some great questions coming out the audience here. Anyone else got any questions for Lindsey? Also, if you have a ghost story, you know where to email me, openmindspodcast@outlook.com. So,
Can I just,
what comes
I was going to
next?
say, I was just
Yeah,
going to share something else, Gloria, because,
yeah, please
all
do.
with all of these experiences, like in the houses, and everything
Mm,
else, I eventually ended up at the spiritualist church
mm-hmm,
with a friend of mine because they'd been told, that they were going to be mediums, etc. And
mm-hmm,
I think, finding a place where you can practice is actually really good and useful. If you're
mm-hmm.
starting to have these experiences and you're like, I don't understand
Yeah.
it, I found it really useful. But when I first started going, I got a lot of spirits coming through who had passed of suicide. And
Mm-hmm,
when I asked, I was like, why do you keep sending me these suicidal spirits? And what I was told was because I'd done the Reiki work and I'd done quite a lot of energy work. And it was like,
mm-hmm,
you have this capacity to be able to share their story, but coming from that place of compassion and love, etc. And I really wanted to get up on stage, like straight away. Like I love, I'm a bit of an extrovert. I love talking and I love
mm-hmm,
sharing. And I was like, right, I want
mm-hmm.
to get on the stage. I want to do this. And it was like, oh well, and there was all these barriers. So I thought, you know what? I'd set up a Facebook group anyway when I first started going through a spiritual awakening, just to help other people who were maybe going
Mm-hmm.
through it. And so I just started doing free readings or pay as you feel readings on Facebook
Mm-hmm.
and putting myself out there and going, right, I need to practice. I really want to practice. I really want to understand what mediumship is. I want to develop it. I want to be able to
Mm-hmm.
help others who've lost loved ones. So I started doing these pay as you feel readings and free readings. And
Mm-hmm.
every time the feedback came back going, oh my God, I can't believe you got that right. And I'm like, every time it's a bit of a shock, and I don't know if you found this,
Yeah.
Gloria, when you first start doing it, it's like, oh my God, how did I know that? And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
little symbols. And I don't know, again, Gloria, like for me, when anyone asks me, like, how do I start mediumship? How do I do it? And I'm like, it's like catchphrase. You've got to say what you see. That's it. Whether it's symbols, whether it's, you know, people, because even if it makes no sense to you,
it'll make sense
it'll
make sense to somebody else. I mean, you know, 200 years ago or whenever, the Spiritual Society was set up, you know, to prove life after death. But they never really touched on ghosts, and ghosts can be scary. You know, the different descriptions, and this is what the show's about for the audience, to inform the audience of all the different experiences around the ghost stories. And everyone loves a ghost story as long as they're not in it. Everyone loves a ghost story. But I wanted to bring a greater awareness and understanding as to, not in all cases, but why these experiences occur. If anyone in the audience is having these experiences, it's possibly because your lights are coming on and you may not even notice. And there, you know, there is ways to shut it down. If you find somebody or speak to somebody about it, there's no taboo anymore. We don't get burnt at the stake anymore, and no one ridicules you. With ghost stories, people, they either believe or they don't believe. So it's just to inform you that these experiences, when you first get them, the ghost story or the paranormal experience, they really are scary. I mean, I've got to throw one out. I remember one of them, I was in a house and I had to go from downstairs to upstairs. Yeah. Now, I remember I didn't know I was a medium, and I'd seen dead people all my life. So, you know, I just didn't even catch on. And I went to go through one room. I turned on the light blew straight in front of me. It was dark at night. I said, I've got to get it. And I needed to get upstairs. It was my youngest daughter. I needed to get upstairs and I had to check on the baby. So that was my incentive not to leave the house. I had a child. So that was my two. And I went to the next light and it went off. And I knew something was there. And I was more than scared than scared. And I thought, I'm going to run up the top of the stairs and I'm going to put the top landing light on and then go into the bedroom. And because I didn't know what it was, I thought there was someone blowing the lights. Had no idea. It could be a human or not. And I run up the top of the stairs. I have to tell you guys, the courage I needed to get to my child, I hit the light switch at the top of the stairs. Boom! That blew as well. I am so telling you. I went in, I grabbed my child, I ran down the stairs. So, you know, this is me looking back, yeah? And I can now laugh and I can understand. It was like Nadia said in the audience, initiation into where you're going. And on that note, not everyone's going to go the same way. Not everyone's going to be a medium, okay? It's just the fact that you can connect. But I love the ghost stories, Lindsay. I just love them.
Thank you.
I think it's fun.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if anyone is experiencing anything that's like feels negative or horrible in the house, like don't sit there and just think, oh, it's on my mind, it's on my mind. You know, do find someone that can either speak for spirit or that specializes in this, you know, because
do your research, though. There are some fraudulent ones out there. But mind you, look, come on, I'm going to have to be the critic here. You've just said that, but when we were younger, did we go and find no one? No, we didn't. We didn't even tell anyone.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm hoping that that's learned from our experiences, Gloria. And like, as soon as something happens, as soon as a light bulb breaks, it's like, right,
exactly.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you do, there are cases, and I'm a different type of medium to Lindsay. I'm what you call a rescue medium. And so, you know, spirits that either don't know they're dead or they're trying to get hold of the occupants of the house, and the occupants are not really connecting with them. So they start throwing things around. And that's the type of mediumship I go into. That's my path. Yeah. If that happens, I would suggest you go and speak to somebody you trust. And you can be sure synchronistically, a friend or family member that won't ridicule you or think you're crazy, someone will know someone. You've got the internet now. If you have any scary things, and you can look to, you know, check them out first. There are some out there, I've said it before, are fraudulent. You've just got to do a bit of homework, like you would
Yeah,
if you're buying a car insurance. The same thing.
exactly.
Or if you're buying a car, who you're buying it from, a dodgy dealer. But at least share. Don't do what a lot of us did back in the day. Well, Lindsay just sat, and I sat in the house as well, for God's sake, just put
Yeah,
the lights on. I mean, I have to tell you, Lindsay, still to this day, I always have a light on in the house.
yeah.
It's a
Me too.
habit.
I've got
Do
my
you?
soul lamp in the corner. But
Yes. Yeah.
I just remember, Gloria, there was another experience that happened only a
Mhm.
couple of months ago that I can share if you want me to.
Yeah,
Um,
do.
okay, so there was a lady that I'd connected with online, and she'd invited me and my children over to her house to meet her and her children. And we'd got there and we're chatting away, and about 3 or 4 hours in, like generally when people invite me, it's like it's for a long time. Anyway, a few hours in, and I was just stood in our kitchen, and from the corner of my eye, again, I don't often see them, but I just saw someone come out of our living room, a shadow, again, like an apparition, a shadow,
Mm,
and then walk towards the front door. And I looked at her, and bear in mind, I'd only known this woman a few hours. I just looked at her and I went, I think I've just seen something walk out of your living room towards your front door. I was like, like it looks like a man and
mm,
Alzheimer's, and I started sort of going into the story
yeah,
behind her, and she just looked at me and she nodded her head and she was like, "Yeah, I've seen him too." And I was like, "Oh, thank God for that."
that's it. I mean, many people that see it, and that they're just not perturbed at all, and they just get on with their lives. They don't end up mediums. In this
No.
case, you ended
Mm,
up as a medium, and that's why, it's called case number 2, the accidental medium. Um, I think there are
yeah.
many today, the mediums today, many of them have gone through the ghost stories. Many of them have gone through the,
Mm,
it's like a training school, or as Nadia said, it's
yeah,
initiation,
definitely.
preparing you. Because one thing, you can't, if you face the light, you've got to face the dark, and you have to overcome the fear.
Oh,
And I will
100%.
say, the only person that can harm you is a human being that's alive.
Mm,
Spirit cannot
mm,
harm you. That I want to throw in as well. So the show is not to scare people, it's to show the excitement of these journeys that we all have with our ghost stories. Others
mm,
can't take it. I've shared it once before. I was in one of my houses, and what you call the shadow people, but it was more solid. So I see them more solid. And I was so used to going down
mm,
my path into the porch, through my front door into the hallway, and no further. They don't know where they went after that. And it was common phenomena. So if you're out the kitchen window, out the front, I would see it all the time. And they would just get on going where they were going, and it didn't bother me in the slightest. And there was a guy staying in a shared house a few doors down, and he came in for paracetamol, and he was stood by the window. And as I'm getting the paracetamol, whatever, and he went, "Gloria," I went, "Yeah." He said, "Hold on," and he went to the hallway, and he looked, and he come back in the kitchen. Some man just walked down your path, um, and come through the door, and walked, and he's gone. And
oh, hello,
I just went,
goosebumps.
yeah, oh, that's normal. It's just a spirit coming through. That man never come back in my house again. He was so scared. Oh my
Yes.
God. I've never, and he kept, I'm not coming back in your house. Oh my, and he went off and told everyone, there's dead
Uh,
people walking through Gloria's house. So, for me, it was normal as
mm,
an adult for these things to occur. So if you do see what we
mm,
call shadow people, or just let them get on and do their thing, unless they bother you, and that normally means they're trying to get your attention, or they don't
yeah.
know they've died. And if they don't know they've died, you need to get a rescue medium to come in and sort them out. So, do you have any more before we close? Is there any more ghostly
I'll,
stories when you were
yeah,
younger?
I'll share my final one, right? So
Yeah.
when me and my ex-husband first got together, we went up to stay in the Hotel Divan up in Edinburgh. And again, I didn't realize at the time it was a former lunatic asylum. So
Hmm.
when we first arrived, my ex had said to me, he said, "Oh, if I fall asleep, Lindsay, just give me a slight tap across the head, just whack me across the head to wake me
Yeah.
up." So
Yeah.
he'd had a bit of a snooze, and all of a sudden he bolted up around bed, and he was like, "Why did you hit me that hard?" And I'd been sat reading a magazine. I was like, I never hit you. And he was like, something's just hit me across the head. I went, well, you did say for something to hit you, you know, if you fell asleep, so you must have fallen asleep. And anyway, we went out to explore Edinburgh, and then the next morning, me and him had gone down for breakfast. And as he it's funny, as he was walking towards the breakfast buffet, there was this like Welsh dresser with all these glasses in it and plates and cutlery. And we were the only two people in the restaurant at the time. Anyway, as he walked past it, this glass, I literally saw it. It flew out of the Welsh dresser and landed behind him and smashed. And he stopped and he turned around. He was like, "What was that?" I says, "The glass just flew out and smashed behind you." I was like, you know, and we're trying to recreate, you know, it was like if he stomped hard enough, did it make something shake, and nothing else fell off. So yeah, it was.
I mean,
again, you know,
I won't
very,
come
very...
from the skeptic on that. I won't. For me, is he asked someone to wake him up, so he opened up and asked a spirit. Well, that spirit said, "You've got my attention, but you're not giving me attention, and hence why you're going to get a glass thrown near you to say, hello, I'm still here." There's a warning for you. And I always say to people, do not touch Ouija boards. Please don't, unless you know what you're doing. Even me, at this ripe young age I am, I will not touch one of those ever, or a ghost box, or nothing. I'm not here to antagonize. So, but that's another part of this. This is why I said earlier on, did you feel it followed you? Because in some cases they do. There's an attachment. But you can see it with your ex-husband. I keep saying the ex-husband because there's something there. It's that he asked to be woken up. So the spirit did him a favor, but he didn't return it by communicating, so he got a glass thrown at him. There you go. That's how it works.
But I think as well, Gloria, you know, I think that for all of us, it's like, and for me as well, you know, we've had to build up and see and have our own experiences before it's like, okay, I now accept there's something else there. Let me start to develop my own mediumship and, you know, be able to connect with spirits. So yeah, it's like, write it down in a journal, you know, keep a diary of it, because
keep it going.
It's going to help. Yeah,
you don't have to even be a medium, Lindsay, do you? You can just experience
exactly.
spirit. There are
it shocked me when I was
people.
Like, sorry,
it's just enjoy the spirit world and the experiences you're going to have. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and you know, I thank you for sharing your ghost story.
You're welcome.
I want to say what I've got to do this now. Next week, next week I don't have a guest coming on. She's in the audience tonight, but she won't come on because she's too shy. And the case next week is case number 3, called Child's Play, 6 feet under. Now, this one is short, a one-off experience. But I am going to come on next week, and if I can't get her on, she's in the audience tonight. She's too shy to come on. I might be able to work on her to bring her on, but then I will just relay this to the audience. You can come into the chat. You know, you can ask questions with me, and I might share a few more things with you. But next week, case number 3, Child's Play. 6
that sounds amazing, Gloria.
Under. When I read that, oh my God, I was like, if that happened to me, that would be it. That would, I thought I'd experienced everything paranormal. I really did. I'll tell you what this lady experienced, if that happened to me, there is I don't know what would have happened. I would have freaked out for the rest of my life. And sometimes it's a little short experiences, you know, that can have the effect. But you know what? When you hear it next week, this lady has joined my development group, and she is from nowhere. She's never been in any class. She's done nothing. She is a top medium. She gets information. I'm thinking of actually going to her for development classes, and I've been doing this for decades. And she had this one experience. Now, who would have thought that this experience would take her to become a medium in the end? Lindsay, thank you so much indeed. And if you have any more really serious ghost stories, email them to me, Lindsey. And to everyone else in the audience, thank you very much for joining. And if you're watching it live and for chatting in the chat, thank you all a lot, guys. If you watch it on a replay, please email me at openmindspodcast@outlook.com. Let me know what you think about our guest tonight and the accidental medium and all her experiences. Do you think she caused them? Or was she really on an initiation to become the medium she is today? Or if you have your own ghost stories, email them to me, openmindspodcast@outlook.com. Until next week with case number 3, Child's Play, 6 feet under. You know where this is going. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Gloria. This is Open Minds Podcast, Waking the Dead Ghost Stories. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.